Recording in progress.
Good evening. At this time, we'd like to convene the Finance Committee of the City of Palo Alto for October 17th, 2023. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Burke.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Lifcott-Hames.
Here.
For the record, 3 present.
Thank you. So we have only one item on the agenda tonight. Before going to that item, we have an opportunity for members of the public to speak on any item not on the agenda, but that is within the purview of the Finance Committee specifically. And do we have any public speakers?
Chair, we do have one request to speak. Yes, you're on the mic. You got 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Mark Grossman, Palo Alto resident, and I'm representing 350 Silicon Valley, which I'm an organizer with. About 5 years ago, we came before this committee with different composition, but with the help of staff and concerned residents, we got a sustainability principle added to the investment principles, which is there today. In view of the ongoing and developing climate crisis, it may be time to update that a little bit. So for instance, CDs are excluded from the sustainability investment, like there's no restriction on where CDs can be invested. However, the banking sector, in order to maintain 2 degrees C rise in temperature, which is already pretty dangerous, we have to stop investing in fossil fuel infrastructure. However, the large banks are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into said infrastructure. I have some handouts here to show just the top 25 contributors to that. So in order to improve our standing as a sustainable city, I would ask the committee and the city council to consider putting some sort of guidance on where CDs are held. I don't have the investment documents with me. I did a request for them, but I believe most of the banks are regional and do not invest in fossil fuel projects. However, so it may be a very easy ask to add that as a criterion for the investments. I would also, as a stretch goal, I would ask you to consider banking. I don't know where the city banks, but if it is one of the large fossil fuel funders, I would ask you to consider changing the bank to a sustainable bank. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our public comments, and we'll go on to our single agendized item, which is printing services review. Ms. Nozay, did you want to kick it off?
Sure. Thank you, Finance Committee. We do only have a single item tonight. With us, we have David Ramberg, Assistant Director of Administrative Services, as well as some of our staff that work in both print and mail, as well as revenue collections in this area tonight. So I will actually turn it over to David to go through the presentation briefly, and then turn it back to the committee.
Thank you, Ben. This evening, thank you very much. And I'll jump right into this and go to slide 2 and provide a little bit of background about how we got here. You probably don't hear about the print shop every day, so want to bring you up to speed a little bit. We had initially a Finance Committee referral from 2019 to take a look at printing services at the city as a possible cost savings opportunity. So in July of 2022, we issued an RFP to look at what's out there in the marketplace, possibly some other vendors. And we got results back, and those results were really quite all over the place, shall I say, quite a range of costs, $400,000 to $3.7 million. And we'll go into kind of a little bit of why that is. But we also came back with a couple areas of concern. One is in the area of what we call rush turnaround. That's usually 1 to 2 days of turnaround, and the team meets usually about 90% of the time, turning around to departments very quickly, most of it same day or next day. Really looking out in the marketplace. That's a stretch for most of the vendors we saw, and something that we take quite a bit of importance in. So that was one area of concern with the RFP. And the other one really was inconsistent costing approaches used by the vendors. We just really had a whole range of interpretations of what we were asking for. So we got a broad range of costs back, and really hard to compare apples to apples in the marketplace as a result. This brings me to a little bit about the print and mail shop itself. So we call it the print shop, but we also call it the print and mail shop because it's also where the mailing function occurs. And so the print and mail shop has a budget of about 1.5 million in expenditures, and that includes staffing of about 2.1 FTE. There is a typo on this slide, so rather than 2.5, it should be 2.1 FTE. And then within the costs that are specifically allocated to the print shop, which is the bulk of the cost, that's about 1.1 million, and it includes shared staffing from that 2.1 FTE. Again, 90% of the work we do is fast turnaround, and there's no extra charge for that for city departments. We also satisfy a very diverse set of printing needs across the various city departments, from CSD to the library to utilities. Just about every department has some sort of printing need. As much as we've gone digital in recent years internally, we still do have a demand to communicate effectively with the community, and we do that with printed documents in many, many cases. There's one other kind of unique aspect to point out about the print shop. The print shop has turned out to be a good growth opportunity and an entry point into the city organization. Wasn't originally set up with that goal in mind, but we have, over the years, we have had a number of staff begin their journey with the print shop with the city vis-a-vis the print shop. They gain some administrative skills, some other skills, and in several cases have moved on to other departments. So we now have former print shop members in the administrative services department and revenue collections, also in the information technology department, utilities, and the warehouse. So just an interesting aspect. I forgot to ask you to advance to slide 3, so we skipped over that. I just did slide 3, so if we could move to slide 4, please, that would be great. And just to give you a little bit of sort of visual reference point, the print shop is roughly right below us, a little bit over that way on A level. And it looks, we have a couple pictures in our slides here. And those are a couple of our large high volume machines, and also the folding machine to the right. And that's the print folding machine. The utility bills go out through that machine, and we send out a lot of utility bills, as you can imagine. And so it's a busy operation, certain times of the month. And an example of the print job variety that we have, of course, we have the council packets. You guys are familiar with those. And we do everything from calendars to brochures to theater programs. We also do temporary street parking signs, and we do bindings of reports. So just kind of a range of things that departments need. And on the next slide, 5, please. We have a summary of the proposals. This is also this table is also in your staff report. I'll just highlight a few takeaways. Again, we saw a broad range of costs, and really vendors chose to bid in different ways, and it was hard to reconcile that across all of the different printing needs we have. So we have that broad range of costs, but at the same time, this is an indicator from the marketplace, and we can say that the city's cost of about 1.1 million is in there somewhere within that market range. Once again, it's 400,000 to 3.7 million at the high end. So the city's cost of 1.1 million by this indicator is sort of in the middle, not the lowest, but certainly not the highest either. And then highlighting again the turnaround times, and many of these vendors are in the multi-day turnaround times, or there's an extra cost for quicker turnaround. One other piece of context that we thought would be important is just kind of looking out and seeing what other what other cities do. So we contacted Menlo Park, Los Gatos, San Carlos, Sunnyvale, and Mountain View. And all of those cities had, in most cases, contracted out for printing services, but in some cases also had staff on site. So the smaller cities usually had 100% contracting out. The one city that really is closest to us for comparison purposes is Mountain View. Mountain View has one full-time equivalent and one hourly staff person, and they also have support that with about 500,000 in external printing contracts. So it starts to get in the range of kind of our costs. One important differentiator for the city is that we do have that high demand of the utilities. Mountain View does not have that, nor do the other cities. So just an indicator for us. And really bringing us right to slide 6 and to our recommendation. So we've gone through this multi-year process with our RFP and come back around, and we really think the best recommendation for the city at this point in time is to keep the services in-house. This will allow us to continue, our core function of servicing the customer departments with quick turnaround, maximum flexibility, and good customer service, all important to our departments. We would add outside contracts in just a couple of places. We do about 10 to 15% use of outside contracts, and we use a local firm here for that. And those are for specialized jobs or higher demand jobs that we just need a little extra bandwidth for. So we would keep that sort of semi-hybrid approach in place. And we would really look to fully staff the print shop, which we haven't been for a little while as we've been waiting to do this review, and bring it up to kind of a one-stop shop. So we would really encourage departments through a little bit of internal marketing to come to the print shop for all of their needs. And if we need to send those out, in some cases, we might do that for them. So we're really looking to kind of bolster the print shop now that this review is done. And if we have approval of the recommendation, and we have one additional recruitment to do, and that would be we would look through that recruitment to potentially bring in some additional print experience from out there, staff people that might have that. The RFP process, as I mentioned, would be canceled, and we would have no award. And then we would report out on status within 12 to 18 months or so, just to do a check-in, see how we're tracking with our goals. I do want to point out too that, of course, the Finance Committee and Council has the opportunity here to do a complete reset, if you like, and say, hey, staff, why don't you go out and do a brand new RFP, see if you get different results. That would be another bite at the apple that we can certainly do. It would take some time away potentially from other priorities, and we might not actually get different results, but just want to lay that out there. We did speak to that in the staff report. So if there's a comfort level in that direction, we can certainly entertain that. But once again, the staff's recommendation is to keep the print shop in-house. And I think with that, I'll conclude my presentation and turn it back to the committee for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any members of the public who want to speak?
Chair Burt, there's no request to speak.
Thank you. All right, colleagues. Julie?
Sure thing. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Randberg.
Yes.
Appreciate your presentation. I, on the face of it, find myself inclined to support the staff report, kind of in the if it ain't broke, don't fix it modality. The cost seems in line with what is happening in the industry with no extra charge for the quicker response time, which we're clearly accustomed to. The entryway for other city for city employment opportunities is special. Having a ladder of opportunity within the city is great. The print and mail nexus seems to make sense to me, particularly when you mentioned the folding machine and the utilities bills. Hard to imagine if the printing was outsourced and the mail was still in-house, what additional time and costs would be associated, and just sort of room for error. came to mind. And then being the only client, I know that there are a zillion departments within the city, but yet we're still the city. Whereas if we were outsourced, then we'd be competing with corporations and other nonprofits for the time. So I'm finding myself thinking, yeah, which makes me appreciate I must be missing something. So I understand there's a lag from the original referral, which was made in 2019, and maybe things were quite broken at that time, or there was some frustration. And I wanted to turn to you, Chair, to ask, is there any history that you want to kind of shine a light on to give us context for why this referral was made in the first place?
None that I'm aware of. I wasn't on the council at the time of the referral. David, do you know of what triggered this?
I think we were doing an across the board review of potential cost savings within the budget. And we have had over time review of similar type services for contracting out opportunities. And this was really one that was, shall I say, ripe for taking a look at. And I think that was the genesis.
Thanks very much. No further questions.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I just have one question, just seeking clarity on the cost. I think the staff report cleared it up, but the in-house print services and the mail shop cost the city about 1.5 million. The cost of the in-house services alone cost 1.1 million, but some of those costs are shared. So it's not like if we were to remove the in-house printing services, we'd be saving 1.1 million because a lot of those resources are being kind of double dipped, correct? And can we quantify that?
Yes, very good question. And there would be, there is a sharing, as you say, of the resources. So, on the mailing side, the big ticket item, we have a line item in the budget for postage. It's about $300,000. So after that 1.1 for printing services is taken away, there's a big chunk for postage, which would remain because we need that function. And we would need, at least 0.5 to 0.75 to 1 FTE to continue to run the mailing shop. So those are kind of the range of costs that would remain, probably $500K in that range for just that pure service of mailing. We wouldn't have the benefit in that case to kind of have the flexibility of staff that can flex one side or the other depending on demand. We do have that sort of backup right now with staff. So we would be lean on the mailing side if we just went solely for that function, but it could certainly be done.
Okay. I support the staff recommendation. I agree with Julie. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I've been impressed by the services at the city level. Compared to this rough estimate of what we have looking at comparable cities, doesn't seem like we're going to get that much greater of a deal going outsourcing this, and might be worse. So I think it makes sense to explore those options in a year or 18 months. I've taught at schools where we've had in-house and not, and the difference really is night and day for being able to get the work done you need on in a timely way. And it sometimes might seem trivial, but when you need something printed out, you need it printed out now, and you can't wait a day. So I like that we have it in-house. I think the department does a really great job, and happy to support the staff motion.
Thank you. And just a few questions and comments. So if we were to outsource, presumably there is some cost associated with the outsourcing process itself. And I didn't see that reference, or is that something we've estimated?
We have not estimated, and certainly there are costs that we weren't able to articulate or to get granular on, so to speak. And there's also benefits too that we didn't necessarily able to carve out. But you are right. The outsourcing, certainly also would be a change management concern, or at least a change management exercise that would be broad. Really bringing the departments on to a different mode of requesting their services and so forth. So yes, there are different aspects, but the outsourcing exercise itself would have a cost.
And then the range of estimates from the RFP, we're in the low end of that range. We have, I guess, one outlier that was around 400,000. The staff report mentioned that there'd be a lot of additional expense for quick turnaround or rush jobs. Do we have any idea why that one proposal was so much lower than everything else, and to what extent it included an understanding of the all the expedited printing that's periodically needed or frequently needed, I should say?
Yes, great question, Chair Burt. With these vendors, and particularly what we're calling vendor number one, there were different omissions on. So essentially, we sent out a line item sheet that was multiple pages long, that had council packets, that had various theater programs, and had counts associated with them. And what we asked vendors to do is to provide us their not to exceed annual amount for each of those line items. And so certain vendors, vendor one, if I remember correctly, vendor one omitted some very large, big ticket items, and it appeared to be unintentional. And when we looked at other vendors, they included them. Some included them at vastly higher levels, so we weren't quite sure, if how they were interpreting it. But certainly, in the case of vendor one, there were some very large omissions, simply to get to that one figure.
And as we've come to recognize with things like our custodial services, where we outsource, and we have ended up having a deeper concern on whether the compensation of the employee base is really living wage based. Do we have any sense, for instance, on the low end bidder? Is that a local source? And do we have any knowledge about whether these bidders necessarily provide living wage?
So I don't have an answer on the living wage component. I can say that the vendors that are represented here are not within the city of Palo Alto, to answer that question.
Yeah.
If that was your question.
Well, I'm thinking more broadly. When I've looked at printing costs at different places, it can vary drastically as we go out even to the Central Valley. But then you have a lot of transportation costs and delays, and the question on what are the wage scales. So I guess we don't really, do we have a good knowledge on where these folks are located, and any sense of whether were any of them union shops and others non-union?
Sure. So the RFP did not require them to report whether or not they were unionized shops or not. It does require the organizations to follow minimum wage laws, but it doesn't require living wage laws, to your point. So we don't have the class specific hourly rates like we've seen in some of the other proposals. That's something more recent, frankly, that we've gotten more sophisticated as we're looking at these outsourcing activities. I will say included in the service provider one, that when you add the rush charges, so if you go down one, two, I think like the third row after the cost, that's how you get up to the roughly $9 to $1 million cost, because there is a surcharge for any rush jobs. So for us, knowing how much of our operations work, we would estimate that we would incur a significant component of those.
Yes, not surprising. And then David, you mentioned that we would still need to, if we move forward with retaining in-house, we go back to being fully staffed. Would that change our cost structure from what we're talking about here?
No, because we budget at that full 2.1 FTE. So although we haven't been staffed at that recently, the budget reflects that. So
we're actually perhaps operating at a little lower cost than that 1.1.
We've been operating very lean. And it has resulted in lower costs, but also lean from a staffing perspective.
Got it. Okay. And through this process, I mean, when going through prospective outsourcing processes, one of the kind of best practices in this is really if there's an internal source, giving them an opportunity to provide ways in which they think that they could either increase revenue or decrease costs through efficiencies. Did we get any of that? Did we seek any of that from our own staff, and did we get any of that feedback?
So given the staffing complement that we've had, we've actually been relying on significant hourly resources. And so didn't feel it was appropriate to request from that line level of staff to create and provide that level of analysis for a broader operation. What we do expect is that as we do staff up, that's why we have that kind of 12 to 18-month recommendation in the staff report, because as we do staff up, we do expect that we will review, frankly, both printing needs in a post-COVID world or endemic world as we now sit. And printing does continue to morph, frankly, as we come out of this. And then also with that full-time staffing and dedicated resources, look at those operations. You know, can we, frankly, do some of that change management of the time turnaround? Do we need to always have rush jobs? So we really do need to stabilize the staffing before I feel it's fair, frankly, to request the staff that are down there on a day-to-day basis supporting us to be able to thoughtfully put together that kind of operational response.
So I appreciate that kind of the depth of analysis from having not having the hourly folks be asked that would give a different and perhaps more valuable analysis. But I would encourage you to nevertheless solicit the input from the existing staff. And, you know, if you get either no responses or responses that you don't deem to be valuable, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But I can tell you from when we went through in my company over the years on kind of continuous improvement processes, one of the things that we really moved away from was relying principally on management to have these insights on efficiency. And we really worked it, not to mention that additional empowerment really helped the line workers be that much more committed to their jobs because they were feeling that their intellects were valued as well as their hard work. And do we have any sense on our utilization rate of our capacity? And I'll tell you what I'm leading toward there, which is have we looked at whether there are opportunities for us to be a provider for other agencies or nonprofits or anything like that? Do we have that capacity? Would we want to consider looking at that? And I'll preface it by saying I'm not necessarily inclined in that direction, but if there are clearly identified opportunities that we think we could provide without having a stepped increase in our costs, we might fill some gaps. I just wonder if that's anything we've considered.
Not directly for this service. I will put a reminder back in some of our minds from many years ago when we used to provide IT services to other cities. That was 10 plus years ago, probably. And we ran that for several years. So we have a little bit of experience along those lines. We found it challenging from a cost perspective under that scenario, but this is certainly something that could be an idea again. So,
yeah, and I'm not, for that very sort of reason, I'm not blindly assuming that it's cost effective to just add more capacity and under the notion that it'll spread our overhead or any of those things. Yeah. Okay. And then do we have any anticipated capital needs that are significant that as we go now, if we've gone a few years with this whole future of the print shop open, I'm guessing that we would have deferred major capital investments.
So I will let David speak to, I think, the shop specific things. What I will also just peg for the committee's awareness is as we embark on our police and public safety moving out of the city hall facilities with the new opening. I think in general, Public Works is looking at physical space in City Hall and how we allocate and use it. So the print shop does have a physical footprint, as David mentioned, below us that we would include in that. Obviously, they do need space for the equipment that's down there, but we haven't necessarily improved that physical space, and we likely, frankly, wouldn't until we understood best where all pieces of the puzzle fit in a post-public safety world in this
But
facility.
not any major pieces of equipment that we've been holding off purchasing because we had
Sure.
uncertainty?
David?
We have not been holding off. We really can't, from the amount of printing we need to keep up. I would say though, we are around the corner from a renewal with our primary provider, Xerox. So council would probably see a renewal coming up because it is our largest ticket down there. Yeah.
And then from a sustainability perspective, probably the thing that rises as a most likely consideration is, we use a lot of paper. And do we have any policies on using recycled paper, and if and when it meets the quality needs?
We do have a city policy.
Oh, your mic's off again.
We do have a city policy. I can't, for recycled, I can't recall the percentage that's our requirement. I will turn to Jesus if you have anything on what our recycled paper usage is. Yeah, come on up.
Welcome.
Speaking of individuals that have started in the print shop and moved on to other pastures within the city, this is Jesus, and he used to work in the print and mail shop, and now actually you likely will see him at the customer service window, helping our community members. Jesus?
Thank you, Kylie. Good evening, council. Yes, we used to use Staples paper, 100% recycled, 24-pound. They discontinued that, so now we use 50%, 22-pound.
Okay. And we use that routinely, or?
Yeah, for
great.
all common copies, unless they specify specialized paper.
Good. And quality is, we don't notice any difference, so I assume it's great. Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. And just the last comment, I didn't, we probably wouldn't have assumed that this would have any regional perspective, but as it so happens, the mayor of Morgan Hill, who I serve with on VTA and elsewhere, grew up with his father running our print shop, and he spent many a Saturday downstairs with his dad. So Jesus, maybe your children will grow up to be mayors. And on that note, we're ready for a motion.
I just want to say one more thing, if I may. I meant to open with gratitude. I'm one of those people who needs a printed packet. I learn best when I have the ability to sort of write notes in the margins. It's a very old school way of being, and I realize it's not the best use of resources, but when I come and pick up my packet every single week, I'm really grateful. They're high quality, and I couldn't do my work without it. And not just the paper, not just, the organization, but the timeliness. And I think it's really all nimbly timed to our obligations to provide notice to the public. And it's a pretty well-oiled machine. So congratulations and thank you. And with that, I will move the, let's see, what do I say? Do I move the staff report? Do I move
Staff recommendation.
staff recommendation? I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, this roll call.
Vice Mayor Stone,
Yes.
Chair Burt,
Yes.
Councilmember Lifcott Hames,
Yes.
the motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you all. And the only remaining item is to discuss upcoming meetings. So.
That is correct. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have officially 3 meetings remaining with this committee this calendar year. The committee dates are November 7th, November 28th, and December 5th. I do anticipate we will have items on each of these evenings. We'll start with actually a night of utilities on November 7th. That's when we'll talk about the status of fiber to the premise project. And obviously that coincides with the grid modernization project, as well as the electric resource integrated plan. So then after that, after the Thanksgiving holiday, we will review the ACFR. So that's the annual comprehensive financial report for FY 2023. So last year's, and the final audit results of that. And then on December 5th, we will jump forward 18 months and start looking at FY 2025's financial plans. Yes, we are always there, or already there, I should say. So that's kind of the docket before this committee, before the end of this calendar year.
Could you say again what you're planning for on November 28th?
Sure.
In terms of duration?
Ah,
It's my birthday, so I'm gonna try to see if I can do anything or if I should just give up.
it is technically, I believe, 2 items, but they all are the same topic. So the first item is the actual audit report from our third-party auditors, MGO. And then the second report is basically staff reporting out on the year-end financials. So where the status is, any adjustments that need to be made to fix. I would not expect it to be an extensive.
Yeah, the first item is generally pretty perfunctory.
Correct. Knock on wood, assuming there aren't major
Yeah.
findings. So I would suspect maybe 2 hours.
Or less.
Yes.
And I'm somebody who's not typically over optimistic on that. So
I think so.
all right, on that note, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.